Welcome to our webinar today on Advanced Analytics, Tracking Past the Click. My name is Richard and I'm the Education Manager here at Vertical Response. I make our video demos, write our documentation, and things like that. Before I get started with the demo today, I do want to note a couple of things, or with the webinar. There will be a Q&A session at the very end of the presentation. So if you do think of questions for me while I'm presenting, please send those questions over using the question box in GoToWebinar, and then we'll cover as many questions as possible during Q&A. Also, the most popular question that comes up at these webinars is this webinar being recorded? Will I be able to access it later? And the answer to that question is yes. This will be accessible through the webinar section of our How to Do Everything site, which will be linked to in a follow-up email, which I will also show you at the end of the presentation. But with that said, I think we can get going here. So what are we going to talk about today? First thing we're going to look at is why you would even want to use the free advanced analytics tools in your account. I know a lot of you are using Vertical Response already. You see your basic reporting like open rate and click-through rate, that kind of thing, and that's very nice and useful. But why would you want to use these other tools, which happen to be free, that you may not already be using? Those tools we'll be talking about are click-to-conversion tracking, return on investment tracking, our Google Analytics integration, and we'll talk a little bit about Google Analytics beyond that integration as well, and then how you can take action with this reporting data that you get back using the segmentation tools in your account. So first, why would you use advanced analytics? Well, the main reason is that it takes your tracking past the click in your email. While it's nice to see that people have actually read your email and liked it and taken action with it, it's even better to see what they've done after taking that action, what they do once they reach your website, because that teaches you more about your customers and what's being successful and not being successful for you. It also makes it easier to get more information from your testing that you may be doing. If you're testing content out, if you're testing out different email times, whatever you're testing, getting more information back from what you're testing is always a good thing. And of course, I'll be talking about how you can run tests before the end of this presentation. So first, click-to-conversion. What am I talking about when I'm mentioning this click-to-conversion tracking? What this is a tool that will let you see if people actually click a link in your email and make their way to a page on your site that you've designated as being the place where you want them to end up. An example, a good place for this to be would be, say, a thank you page after a purchase or a confirmation page after a registration. What we do is we give you a little snippet of HTML code. You copy and paste this code to any number of pages on your website. Then if someone clicks a link in your email and makes their way to a page that includes this code, then they will be tracked in your account as a conversion. That's why a thank you page after a purchase is a good place for it, because you think, you know they've actually made a purchase if you're thanking them. They clicked the link, they found an item to purchase, they've purchased it, you've thanked them for it, therefore they've done what you wanted them to do, and they are a conversion. And as to how you turn it on, well, we'll see that in just a moment. We're also going to talk about return on investment tracking. This is like click-to-conversion, but it takes it a little bit further and lets you track how much money your email is generating, how much money people are spending from actually clicking a link in your email and making their way to your website. It works in much the same way. You add some code to the purchase page, the purchase confirmation page on your site, which can then pass that information onto us regarding how much money has been spent. It's a little bit more complicated to set up, but we'll talk a bit about that as we go. And then Google Analytics integration. And this integration actually allows you to see in Google Analytics, if you're using Google to track traffic on your website, Vertical Response as a source of traffic. So you may see that you have Google AdWords as a source of traffic, that you may have a certain website that's directing people to you. You'd see this in Google Analytics. And now you can also see Vertical Response as part of that source of traffic. You can also see all the people who've made their way to your website from your email, and then how long they were there and how many pages they visited. So if you're not familiar with Google Analytics or using any sort of analytics tools like this, what Google Analytics lets you do for free is track traffic on your website, where people are coming from, how long they're there, what sort of web browsers they're using. It just lets you compare and see what's leading, what's working, what's getting more traffic on your site. So how you're succeeding, what you need to do to be more successful. So this is what we're going to learn, is a little bit more about Google Analytics and how you use it with vertical response. And then the final thing we'll look at is list segmentation. Now, list segmentation allows you to set up split tests in your account so that you can test different things like the timing of your email messages, or test different subject lines or different content to see which works better. It lets you create targeted lists to focus on more specific groups of people for your mailings. And of course, the more targeted your email can be to the interests of an individual person or group, the more likely they'll be to take action with your email. So it's a very useful tool for doing this. It also lets you run exclusions and suppressions, which we might talk a little bit about, but probably won't get too much into today. So that's what we're talking about here. And so let's get started with all of these things, first by looking at click-to-conversion tracking. So click-to-conversion tracking, again, allows you to track whether people who have clicked a link in your email have actually made their way to do the action that you wanted them to take. And where do you find click-to-conversion tracking? You find it under Account. This is your profile. And then under Analytics Settings. And then under Click-to-Conversion. Now, once you get to this point, you enable it by using the drop-down menu to choose Click-to-Conversion. And then you click Submit. As you see here, we've given you a little snippet of HTML code. You're going to choose this code, copy it. Now, if you have access to your own HTML, if you've designed your own site, you're going to copy and paste this into your HTML on whatever page or pages you want to track as people having converted if they reach it. If you do not design your own website, you would give this to your designer and tell them this is what they need to do, is add this to a page, like a thank you page again after a purchase, where you want to know people have reached that point after clicking a link. So just to give an example of what you would be doing, saying if you were writing your own HTML, I'm going to choose this, copy it. Then I'm going to look at my HTML here, and where I want to place this code is somewhere within the body of my HTML. See here, this is my body because it's between the two body tags, and now I'm just going to put it at the bottom. There we go. So any pages I want to track that way, I just put that there, save it, put it on my website, and I am all set to go with click-to-conversion tracking. Now, where would you see this information in your account as far as tracking those conversions? You would see that, of course, in your regular reporting area. If we go into emails and sent emails, you can see now that I've turned this on, I have a new column next to my standard reporting called conversion, or conv for short. So I would see a conversion percentage here, the percentage of people who actually are converting. And then if I went in to the tracking, to the dashboard for the email itself, under here, there's nothing here since I just turned this on, but I would see here a conversion statistic that would be written out. And also under reports, I would see a conversion graph here that shows my account's average for conversions. So that's how you turn click-to-conversion on. So now let's talk about the return on investment tracking. Now you find that in the exact same place under Analytics Settings. I'm actually going to quickly make a change there. There we go. So we find that under Analytics Settings and then under Click-to-Conversion again, except now we're choosing to enable Click-to-Conversion plus Return on Investment Calculator. So I choose that option. I click Submit Changes. It's all very similar. And now you can see we have this snippet of HTML code, which we're copying and pasting in the same sort of way. I just copied and pasted the click-to-conversion snippet. But there's something really important to note here. You can see in this code there is a bolded purchase amount. Right there. It says amount equals purchase amount. And that purchase amount is something that you need to replace as part of the process. So you add this to a purchase confirmation page on your site. And so you have to set things up on your own website where that information as to the amount of money that's been spent by the individual customer can be passed here for us to put it into your account. This is not something I can really show you how to do here because how that works would be based on how your own website is set up. If you do have a designer or someone who has set up the purchasing system or registration system on your website, then they should be able to take this snippet of code and look at it and know what they need to do to pass that information into this line so that we can see it in your account. But everything else is the same. You're just taking this code and adding it to the page on your site very simply. So now, where does this information show up in your reporting once you have it turned on? We would go into email again, sent email, very reasonable, logical place to see it. And now we'll see another column added to the end here called revenue. And now you're going to see how much money people are spending if they click a link in your email and make their way to your site. So how that works, people click the link, we then save a cookie in their browser because they've actually gone from the email to your website. Then over the next 2 weeks, if they make their way back to your site and make a purchase and they haven't cleared their cookies or anything, which people can often do, so it's not going to count absolutely everyone, but if they, over a 2-week period, make their way back to your site, they will be tracked as having spent money with you, and that'll go towards your revenue number there. The same thing would be true of conversion. That's the same way we do that. We put a cookie in their browser. If they don't clear their cookies for 2 weeks and they come back to your site at any point after clicking that link in the email, then they will be tracked as a conversion. So you'd see it there. Then also if we go into the email itself, if we go into the dashboard, you'd also see ROI calculator here. As you can see, it says not enabled for this email. So I'm going to go back to one of the slides we were looking at earlier and show you what it looks like. The reason it says not enabled for this email, of course, is because it was not enabled for this email because I sent that out before I turned it on. So now if I do flip back to our slides here and make my way back to the return on investment, this is the calculator that you would see within the reporting section. Here, it will show you the cost of email. So however much you spent on the email to launch it out would show up under this ROI cost. You could then put any additional cost. So if you paid a designer to put your email together, for example, you could type that cost in. And then it shows your revenue. And then it gives you your actual return on investment. You made 694% of what you spent for this email. And that's just a nice way to see what kind of money you're making back based on the actions people are taking with your messages. Now, are these perfect ways to track how much money people are spending or if they're converting? Well, of course not. There's no perfect way to do that. If someone just opens your email and decides to go back to your website next week, we're going to have no way to know they did that because they didn't click a link to get any process started. So you're going to have people who actually do that, who take action based on your email, who never actually click a link. You're going to have people who have cookies turned off. You're going to have people who clear their cookies. So not everyone who makes a purchase will get tracked as having done so. Not everyone who converts will get tracked as having done so. There's no way around that. But it gives you a very good idea and a very strong way of looking at what's going on, whether your emails are successful or not, because most people are going to get tracked that way, even if not everyone does. I'll flip my slide back down here, and then we'll go back. So that's the return on investment calculator. So now let's look at the Google Analytics integration. So again, Google Analytics is used to track traffic on your website. If we take a quick look here, this is what it looks like. This is the Google Analytics dashboard. This obviously has nothing directly to do with vertical response. Even though we have an integration with them, this is something you're getting directly through Google. It's a free tool that they provide. And there are other tools out there that will let you track traffic on your website, of course, but this is the one that we happen to be integrated with. So you sign up for this. They then give you a code that you add to every page on your website that you want to track traffic on. To show you what that code looks like, they hand it over to you during the sign-up process for your site. If I now go back to that HTML we were looking at earlier, we can see here it looks like this. This is what they give you through Google Analytics to add to pages on your site. And you copy it and paste it onto your site in much the same way I copied and pasted the click-to-conversion code. You're simply putting it within the body tag of your message, and it's not a bad idea just to put it at the very bottom of your HTML as I've done here. So you put that on every page, and then if people make their way between those pages, Google Analytics is tracking the movement and how long they're there and where they came from and all that stuff. So going back quickly to Google Analytics here, you can see it gives you some nice basic information like how many people have visited, how many of them were unique, so how many of them weren't just the same person visiting twice that day, how many page views, so when they get to your site, how many pages do people actually flip through and see while they're there? Did they just look at the first page, or did they look at 4 or 5 different pages? You can see this site has an average sort of 4.5 page views per visitor. The time on site, so how much time they spend there, we have an average 23 seconds for this site. That could be several minutes on your own site. You also have a bounce rate, which is a very important thing to look at. Of course, we all know what bounces mean on email. That means the email, generally speaking, the email address you mailed to no longer exists. And so the email bounce back is undeliverable, the same way as if you send someone a postcard and they're no longer at that address, that it comes back to you as them no longer being at that address. A bounce rate in Google Analytics, this means that they hit the first page of your site and left. They didn't do anything from then on, from that point forward. They just went to the first page and left your site because they weren't interested. So that's obviously a rate you want to keep fairly low. And so it's a good thing to be looking at, depending on where you're directing people. You want to look at the pages you're directing people to, and if they're bouncing from specific pages, because that would mean you want to change that page, optimize it to get them interested in what you are showing them on your site. A 25% bounce rate is not all that bad. This is one of my personal sites, and it's just because my mom visits my site all the time, and she's obviously not going to bounce back from a personal site of mine. She's not going to leave it on the first page. So now you can also see browsers people are looking through, nice things like that. Then you can also see traffic sources. So this is a very good way to see what's being successful in sending traffic to your website. So if we look down here, I can view a full report of traffic sources. When I turn on the Google Analytics integration with Vertical Response, I can see sites people are coming to, places that are referring people to this site. And then I can also see Vertical Response email. I don't send any emails out. I just want to have this one in here as a small example. But you can see Vertical Response email has sent 2 visitors to my site over this time period. So they clicked a link in the email and made their way to my site. You'll obviously see more than that, since you'll be sending emails out to these people directing them to your website. That's not the only place you'll see Vertical Response traffic, but this gives you an idea of what you are going to see, and then we're going to come back here in a minute and take a little bit of a deeper look at what you see as part of the integration. But now I want to tell you how you would turn the integration on. So going back here, we're going to follow what is becoming a trend and go to Account, Analytics Settings, and now we see Google Analytics is the first thing that comes up. If you don't have a Google Analytics account and you need a way to track traffic on your website, you can always click Sign Up here. We'll direct you straight to Google, and it takes about 5 minutes to get signed up with a Google Analytics account if you follow the process there. Now, when you're ready to actually put this to use, you click Add Domains. And then any domains you're tracking with Google, you just type in here. I'll use that domain. You can add as many as you want. If you just simply add your top level, your main domain, your top level domain for your site, then any other pages on your site that are being tracked with Google will be part of the integration automatically. You just have to enter the primary part of the domain for it to work. So that's what I'll do there for that site. And then I click Submit Changes. And now this is turned on. So by turning this on, now we're going to see Vertical Response as a source of traffic on Google Analytics. And so anyone who clicks a link in the email and makes their way to your site will then make that tick up by one more person in your traffic sources. Now something else that this can do is tell you who actually came to your site and how long they were there. So that's a very useful piece of information for going past the click. So to get that activated, this is something that you turn on individually for each email you send out. It comes up at the very end of the email launch process. So I go into this email here, and I go to launch it. I scroll down here towards the bottom, and now you see that by turning this integration on, I have a Google Analytics merge field box at the bottom of my page. And I leave it checked, and this is what keeps the integration turned on for this particular email. But now I can also choose which piece of data from my list I want to see pulled over into Google Analytics. I'm going to choose email address, and because I've chosen email address, if I send this email out, then if I go into Google Analytics and look at add versions, I will then see, and now we only have one example here, but you will then see a list of everyone who visited your site. You will then see the number of visits that individual person made while the cookie was still active there coming from Vertical Response. You'll see their pages per visit and their average time on your site. So this can be a very useful way, obviously, just not only to see who's actually making their way to your site and being able to view it within Google Analytics, but also to see, depending on, you can actually go back to Vertical Response and say, I want to look at my reporting and pull down a list of everyone who clicked a link in this email. So I want to pull down a list from my July newsletter. And go down to download lists. And I want to download lists of everyone who clicked a link. So I'm going to download a list of everyone who clicked a link in my email, include some information there, download it. I can then open this up in Excel or Apple Numbers or whatever program you have available to look at lists. Then you could look at the links in this reporting. You can actually see the links that people are clicking. And when you do that, so you can do a comparison here, you can come over here and look at the this ad version section and say, here's this person, click this link. This is how long they then spend on my site. You could look for trends to see if people clicking certain links are spending more time on your site than people who are clicking other links. Now, that's obviously a lot of work if you're mailing to lots and lots and lots of people to manually go through that. But if you have a fairly small number of people and you look at this, you can compare directly people who are going to your website to the links they clicked. So you can see if people clicking a certain link tended to spend more time on your site than other people, which would then lead to you being able to know which pages on your site are more effective, which can then affect changing other pages to be more like those pages or changing what you actually put into your email to drive people to your website. That's some of the usefulness there of Google Analytics. And there's a lot of stuff going on in Google Analytics besides the vertical response integration. Obviously, again, seeing where people come from and what's directing traffic to your site is huge in knowing what's being successful, whether it be a Google AdWord is directing traffic to your site or an advertisement somewhere else. I mean, that if you're not tracking where people are coming from, then you're not knowing what's effective and you're not going to be able to improve what you're doing. So that's the advanced tracking that we provide. Click the conversion, return on investment, and Google Analytics integration. Now, if you have questions about this, we'll be able to come back to this during the Q&A in about 20 minutes and get more into those three types of tracking. But now what I want to show you is how you can take action to improve your results using vertical response. So now we've seen advanced reporting. Now I want to show you some advanced list management. So let's go back over here, and let's go to the list section. Now under lists, there is a very useful tool called segments. And this segments tool lets you work with any data in your account to create, one, more targeted mailing lists, to set up split tests, and to, as I mentioned, do exclusions and suppressions and things like that with your data. What I want to look at here in this demo is how you would create more targeted lists and how you can create split tests. And I'll tell you why I want to talk about both those things here in a moment. So if I go in, I'm going to choose to create a new segment, and I'm going to give my segment a name. We'll call this my split test. So the first thing I want to do is set up a split test. And why I want to set up the split test, some examples of why I would want to or you might want to. Let's say, so what I'm doing here with this test is splitting a list or several lists into several different groups. So I could take my master list in my account. I usually mail my newsletter to that list. But I'm not sure. I mail my newsletter at Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I've been doing that all year. I feel like my open rate is not where I want it to be. So now I think maybe a change in timing will improve the response to my email. But I don't want to change it for everyone, because what if I choose a new time that's actually worse and I get a lower open rate and a lower click-through rate? So what you can do with split testing, I can say, let's take the master list and let's split that list into 3 or 4 or however many groups. And then I can determine, and as we'll see, what percentage of people appear in those groups, and then I can do different tests with those individual groups. So we'll explain that more as we get towards the end of this process. But now I want to show you how to actually set up the split test. So I'm going to choose Segment List Members Only. Then I'm going to click Save and Build Segment. And now I'm going to be able to choose which list or lists I want to work with to do my test. So again, assuming I send my newsletter to my master list, I can just choose that. I could also choose several different lists in my account to work with together to do the split test. But for ease of use, I'm just going to choose the master list to keep things direct. So now when I choose that option, I can take everyone from my master list, or I could drill down to find more specific groups of people, like say everyone in my master list who's in Kentucky, or everyone who's in my master list who is a customer. So I could really drill down to, again, very specific groups of people. I'm not going to do that right now, but I'm going to show you how to do that here in a few minutes. But for now, we're just going to take the entire master list and ask the system to find everyone in it. I'm going to click Save and Get Results. And since I did absolutely no search parameters there, it's going to give me everyone in my master list and a preview of those people. There we go. There they all are. I click Save Results. And now here's where I set up my split test. As you can see here, when you do a segment, even if you do a segment where you just find everyone, so you haven't really segmented anything, you just found everyone in your list, you can either take that and create a single list from that data that's been found, or you can create multiple lists. If you're going to create multiple lists, you can choose to create as many different lists as you want to do. I'm going to say, let's create 3. Then I click Update, and now there are going to be 3 different lists created. As you can see here, by default, it's splitting the data that we found into thirds, so they go into each list. So we get a random third in this list, a random third in that list, and the remaining third in that one. Now, to do the split test that I want to do, I'm sending out my newsletter every Wednesday at 1 p.m. I don't know if that's the best time. So what I want to do is I want to try Tuesday at 1 p.m. and I want to try Thursday at 10 in the morning to see if that does any improvement. But again, I don't want to try that with everyone because I don't want to end up accidentally doing even worse with my response rates. So what I can do now is say I want to do 10% of my list in this group, and that'll be a random 10%. 10% of my data in this group, another random 10%, and the remaining 80% in this group. So over here I can do, let's make this my Tuesday test. Let's make this my Thursday test. And we'll make this my control group. So I'm going to try that 10% on Tuesdays at 1, this 10% on Thursdays at 10 in the morning, and then this control group will still continue to get my newsletter at Thursday at 1. Now I do my test. If I see some improvement on a certain day, I can continue to test it over time with that group, see if it continues to do well, and then you could move your entire list over to the new time. Again, other ways you might use this, let's say you're going to send out an event invite, or you're going to send out an email about a sale you're having, or any number of different things, and you have some subject lines you want to try, but you're not sure which subject line will work the best. What you could do here is similar to this. You could set up a split, try one subject line to one group, try one subject line to another group. Whichever subject line performs best, a couple of days later, you then use, whatever one gets you the highest open rate, you then use with your control group to then get the highest response rate. You can also use this for content, for sending people to different parts of your site. There's a lot of different things you can test here for different designs to your email to see if you get a better response rate. But one thing you want to definitely do when you're testing like this is only test one thing at a time. If you're going to test subject lines, only test subject lines. Don't test subject lines and timing, because you won't know which one led to the higher response rate. And then so you don't have any actionable information there. If you're going to test content, just test content. If you're going to test content, just change one thing. Just change the look of the email, or just change how you've laid things out, or just change the kind of pictures you're using. Only change one certain thing so that you know that if there's an improvement, that that's the thing that actually led to the improvement, so you can take action with that for your emails going forward. Say a really big question that we get here at Vertical Response is, what is the best thing that I can do? What are best practices? What's the best day of the week to send an email out? What's the best way for me to put my email together? What's the best subject line I could write? And while there are best practices for those things that are useful guidelines for you to follow, there's no better way to ensure you're doing the absolute best you can do than to be testing things out. Because a best practice for 70% of people mailing may not be a best practice for your group. And so the only way you can figure that out is to test, which is why we put this testing option in your account. So to continue on with the demo here, I've set up the list that I want to create. I click Create Lists. And now as you can see, my Tuesday test has 10% of my records. Again, it's a completely random group. My Thursday test, 10%, and then the control group has the remaining. So now I go back to my main mailing list page where all of my lists are stored. You can see my master list is still here. It does not in any way touch or affect the list that I'm testing. That stays the same so that it's still there when I'm ready to go back and start using it again. But now down here at the bottom, you can see I have my Thursday test, my Tuesday test, and my control group up here. I've got this in alphabetical order. And so now I can send the emails out to these individual groups the same way I would send out to any other list that I uploaded to my account. And then when I'm done with it, I delete them, and my master list is still there and ready for me to use. So that's how you can set up a split test in your account. So now let's talk about creating more targeted lists. As I mentioned when setting up the split test, I could have obviously drilled down to more specific groups of people when I set up that test. Instead of finding everyone in this individual list, I could have said, I want to find everyone in this city, or I want to find everyone who matches any sort of data I have in my list, because the nice thing about the segment tool is that you can search on any data you have in your account, whether that be a city, whether it be a custom field that you've created, whether it be data you've collected through your reporting. Did someone convert? You can search based on that with segments. So let's look at all those things you can use here to create more targeted lists. And the reason I want to show you how to create more targeted lists, and the reason this relates to your reporting and your testing, is that the more targeted your email is to a specific group of people, the higher your response rate is likely to be. If I am a customer and I always buy the same sort of item from you, then if you send me emails about those types of items, I'm going to be more likely to open your email than if you send me emails about everything that you're selling. And that doesn't mean you couldn't advertise other things that you're selling to me. You just bring me into the email by talking about the things that clearly interest me, and then you talk about the other things further on in the email as sort of an addendum to that part, which definitely interests me. That's just one way to talk about how being more targeted can make your emails more successful. So I'm going to come in here to segment my list and give my segment a name. So we'll call this my targeted list. This is just for my own reference. And so now, we talked about doing a split test, but now I want to talk about all these different options on this page and what they mean before we go in and start really looking at the power that you have within this tool. You have segment list members only, which will let you search based on your list data. Can I find everyone who's in Kentucky? You have segment campaign recipients only, which will let you segment based on your reporting data. Give me everyone who's opened any of these 3 emails. Give me everyone who's clicked one of these 2 links in this message. The advanced option, segment list members and campaign recipients, will let you work with both at the same time. Find everyone in Kentucky, but only if they click this link in this email. That kind of thing, which we'll see as we go along here. You can also merge data together. We're not going to look at that because I think that's kind of obvious. You just choose things. You just choose different groups and lists and you merge them together. So very direct. Let's go back to segment list members only and start there. So I choose that option, and now I can choose the list that I want to segment on. I'm going to choose to look at my California customers and my newsletter subscribers. I click Done, and then those are the lists I'm searching through. So it's going to search through both equally. Now I can set up my search parameters that I want to use to actually search through these lists. So I'm going to give an example I often do in this situation because it's very direct, is I want to have an event here in San Francisco, but I only want to invite people near San Francisco to this event because it's going to be in a couple of days. So I want to get my customers who are right around San Francisco. So how do I find those people? I can just come here and say I want to search based on city equals San Francisco. Then I choose or, and we'll talk about why I did that in a second. And then city equals Oakland, or city equals Berkeley. And that will find those people in the cities around San Francisco and in San Francisco. So again, I chose or here over on the right instead of and. And why I did that is when you choose or, it'll find anyone who matches any of your parameters. By choosing or, it's going to find everyone in San Francisco or Oakland or Berkeley. So it'll find all 3 groups, and it'll create a list of those people. If I chose and, it will find only those people who match all the parameters, only people whose city equals San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley, which in this case would obviously be no one, because no one city equals all 3 of those cities simultaneously. That just would not be possible. So I would want to do or there. Now I would use an and search in another situation, like where I wanted to say I want to find my San Francisco customers, I want to find my people in San Francisco and who are already customers. And then it's going to only find people in San Francisco who are customers. Now you notice here that when I make this choice that it only lets me use one or the other at a time. I can only do all or all and in a search. How could I do a mix of things there and say I want to find everyone in San Francisco or Oakland or Berkeley only if they are customers? Well, I'll show you how to do that in just a moment here. Actually, I'll show you how to do that right now. So if I want to do a mixed and or search, how would I set that up in the system? I just switch to advanced mode. See that little link up in the upper right hand corner? And now I still have this rule here, but now I want to add another list rule. And then I'm going to choose a list I want to work with. I'll choose the same list. And now, you see I have this little pipe connecting these two list rules. It says or right now, so it would be the same as this up here, but I can say, let's click that and make it and. Now, with that and in place, everyone I find will have to match both sets of rules. So it's going to find first it's going to find everyone in these three cities, and then it's going to drill down then to from that group of people, everyone who is a customer. This is a custom field that I've created myself to tell me if someone is a customer or not in my account, yes or no. So in this case, customer equals yes. So now the only people it will find are people in those three cities who are also customers, because I've used an and there. Now I can continue to stack down here. You can really get advanced with this and say, I also want to do people who are customers, and I'm a winery, so I want to know if their favorite wine is equal to whatever their favorite wine happens to be. I don't have a brand on the tip of my tongue here. So you could really drill down to very, very specific groups of people based on the data that you already have in your account that you've uploaded to your mailing list. So that's one thing you can do here with creating more targeted lists. Now, other things you can do is work with your campaign reporting. To show you what that looks like, I could add a campaign rule, and I could do a campaign rule by itself if I wanted to. And I can say, let's pull up the people, anyone who received these two newsletters, and open them within a specific date range of July 1st and July 7th. I can also go with no date range at all. So now I'm only finding those people because maybe based on their reaction to that email I sent out, I want to send them an email that's similar or has the same kind of content, and I want to reach out to them using the design I used there. You could also say I want to base this on people who clicked certain links to follow up with them. Or if you're using the advanced analytics, you can go with converted. Say I want to find everyone who converted and send them a thank you email based on this event invite I did earlier to my San Francisco event. Or I want to find everyone who did not convert, and I want to follow up with them with a different kind of email. Since they didn't convert from my first email, I want to see if they'll take action with this new email where I'm linking them to a new page with some new information. So again, you can really, really stack your reporting together here and do a lot with it. One other thing I want to note just while we're looking at it is the ability to do exclusions here, because that can be very useful for keeping certain groups of people out of a list. And you just do an exclusion by saying exclude. And it's that same connecting pipe. And so now, based on doing that exclusion, what I've set up here, the system will find anyone from those two lists in San Francisco, Oakland, or Berkeley, and then exclude from that group anyone who received these two emails. And so in that way, let's say I sent these two emails out to smaller groups of people. They were successful. Now I want to try them with larger groups of people, but I want to make sure I don't send this same email out. I don't hit the same people with the same email since they already took action with it. And so I can say, let's take everyone who received this email, or take everyone who converted from this email, and exclude them from this group so I can then send a new advertisement to the same group and see if more people will actually convert. So let's say if we use the event registration, the event option as an example here, I put the click to conversion tracking on my event registration page, on my confirmation page that says thank you for registering. And then what I do with that, I say I want to take the people who converted from those campaigns and exclude them from this list data so I can send another invite out and not annoy them with another attempt to convert them for something they're already going to do. So that is a detailed look there at what you can do with segmentation. So now what I want to do here to finish this out is actually just finish making this segmented list I've created. So I go to Save and Get Results. I get a preview just like before when I was setting up my split test. I go to Save Results there. And now I can, as before, I can do a single list with this data, or I can do multiple lists. So I could do a split test with this group if I wanted to. I'm just going to do a single list though. I'm going to leave it with the name of my segment. I click Create Lists. And now this is part of my mailing list section, ready for me to mail. And again, it has no impact on your original list. It does not remove these people from that list. So the lists I used here, my California customers and newsletter subscriber list, are still completely intact. It's create a new targeted list, which I can then delete when I'm done using it. So it has no other impact on the account at all. Then when I go to create my email, I can choose that list to mail to just as if I had uploaded it directly from my computer. So that is what I wanted to look at today in the webinar. So now we've left plenty of time for questions, and I can see there have been a lot of questions, so I'm glad that we did that. So now let's start looking at them.
We do have quite a few, Richard, so we will try to get to all of them. I'm sorry if we miss you. We will try to follow up with you after this webinar, but I kind of will just go through them as they came in. So the first question is, does click-to-conversion only track sales when the code is on your thank you page?
So as far as tracking sales, with click-to-conversion only track sales, then you could put it on another page if you feel like that page could verify that the person had made a purchase. You could put it on the final page of the purchasing step. As far as click-to-conversion, well, depending on what is meant by that, if you mean does click-to-conversion only track a revenue when it's on the thank you page, it can track a revenue wherever you put it so long as you can pass that information to that snippet of code. So wherever you have recorded that information and you can actually put it in the code, then that would work fine. As far as where click-to-conversion actually tracks purchases, click-to-conversion will track people as a conversion wherever you put that code. So if you wanted to put that in the middle of the purchasing process and count that as a conversion, that would work perfectly fine. They would then count as a conversion.
All right. Next question. We use GoToMeeting for webinars. Will they add the click-to-conversion on their confirmation page?
That's something that we have not actually tried here because we use GoToMeeting for our webinars too. We've not tried that before, but if you reach out to them, there should be some possibility of them doing that. I'm not sure if that would actually happen or not. You can also forward people to a page on your site once they've registered. I'm pretty certain of that. And so if you set that page to be a page on your site and have it happen in like 5 seconds, then you could use that. You put the conversion tracking on your own page where you send them when they're done registering, and then you count that as the conversion if GoTo wouldn't do that for you.
What if you want multiple conversion pages? For example, one targeted group should be sent to a different page than another group.
So if you want to have multiple conversion pages, unfortunately with conversions you only have the one snippet of code, and you'd be adding that to various pages. You're of course not limited to one page. It could be any page that you want it to be on, several of them, in fact. So the thing with that is you would add that code to every page you want to send people to, but then you would be trusting based on what you've set up in your own email that they're actually reaching that page and not another page that includes that code. So depending on how stratified things are, if there wasn't any real risk of people reading your email and going to another page that you weren't intending them to, then this would work just fine. You just put the code on any page you want to track for conversions, and then anyone who makes it to any of those pages will track as a conversion.
Does the ROI calculator take into account the cost of sending through vertical response?
Yes, it does. If you saw my example, it had cost $0 for the email, and that's because I didn't want to pay for the email that I set up as an example. But in your own account, if we were to look at that slide again, and let me pull it back up where I had the example, you would say cost of email, and that would show you the cost, however much this cost you to send the email out through vertical response would be noted there. So that would go in to your return on investment calculation, yes.
Okay. With Google Analytic domains being tracked, it tracks all the pages of the site where the code appears?
That's right. So with Google Analytics, you have to put that code from Google on every page on your site that you want tracked with Google. So if you have 100 different pages, you've got to add that code to every single page.
Can you show an example of Google Analytics with the merge fields as something else? How would that show up in Google Analytics?
So with the merge fields as something else, let's say you put in city as an example. So instead of, and we'll flip over to Google Analytics again here, and go to add versions for my one-person example. Instead of seeing the email address, we would see the city where this person came from. If you change that to be first name, you would see their first name there. So any data you choose there, it appears right here in add versions. That's just what's being used as the identifier for the individual people once they reach your site.
Another Google Analytics question. Can you give me an example of the flow in an email campaign, how you would tie this together? and I think it's the setup process.
So the setup process of actually putting the email together and
Would you have to set it up before or after the email went out?
got it. So you'd have to set it up before the email went out. First, you'd have to have your Google Analytics account and have the Google code that they provide you on every page that you want to be tracked through Google on your website. That's the first thing you have to do is get your Google Analytics account set up. Then you'd have to turn things on with vertical response under your analytics settings in your profile area, as we saw. And then you put your email together and launch it out. Now, you could build your email beforehand and just not have launched it yet. You just have to turn all this stuff on before you launch the email and make sure before you launch it that you have that Google Analytics box at the very bottom of your launch page, because that tells you Google Analytics is turned on.
Can you set up an automated response to people who have visited the site?
That would be a beautiful thing to be able to do, but we don't have any sort of autoresponders like that in our system.
With that question, she also wanted to personalize it based on location. So would it be possible for her to download a list from Google Analytics of everybody that visited that site and send a targeted email to by city?
By city, no. Google does not give you that specific of information. They consider that an invasion of privacy, and the reason they do is because nations consider it an invasion of privacy, and Google that would get them under more scrutiny here for doing the tracking if they were showing you that much information about people who just came to your site. So you would not be able to get a hold of a list of where people were, what city they were in from Google, and then track in that way. You'd need to already have that information in your account and segment using the segment tool.
I would like my recipients to be able to choose the type of emails they receive. Example, a newsletter from a different type of marketing message. I would also want them to be able to unsubscribe from one but not the other.
Got it. So, of course, based on that question, you likely already know that Vertical Response has an all or nothing unsubscribe system currently. People unsubscribe from your list, from your email, then they are unsubscribed from your account in every list in which they appear. Now, with that said, one of the reasons we made a big upgrade to our list system back in October so that we had a master list, which was a master database, which then had branch lists off of that, like my newsletter subscriber list, my California customer list. Those are all individual lists that are branching off of my master list. One of the goals with that was down the line to be able to allow people to set up subscriptions for different lists without people having to unsubscribe from the entire account. So with that said, that's obviously not in place yet. I don't know where that would be on the roadmap. It certainly won't be this year. That's just something you can think about coming down the line. Now, if you wanted to do that now, and you have a database management system of your own where people can manage, say, their subscription to your site, what you can do is in your unsubscribe message in Vertical Response, you have to leave our link as the main unsubscribe to unsubscribe from everything. But you can also say, go here to manage your account details, go here to unsubscribe from everything, and then that would be our link to unsubscribe from everything. So if you do have any sort of management system currently, you could link to it to direct people away from the main unsubscribe link if they wanted to only unsubscribe from one list or the other.
Another question type comment about the master list is if you were to create a segment from that master list and you went back later after you sent out the email and deleted that segment, would those emails be deleted from your account?
No, they wouldn't. So they could be if you chose to delete them. But if we go take a look here, and let's actually go look at a list here, if I can get my screen going. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. There we go. Okay. So if we go back and look at lists, and we say, let's look at this segmented list here of my, let's find the targeted list for July, and I go to delete it. You're given two options when you do that deletion. You can delete the list, but keep the people in whatever list, in your master list, because that's where all the master records are located. So you can delete them and leave all their records in your account, or you can delete them entirely from your account. And that would remove the people from whatever list they came from and from your master list, and that would just delete them entirely again from your account. So if you don't want to delete people, you just want to delete the list, you just leave it on the default. The list will go away, but the records themselves will be in whatever list they were in before.
All right. When you're looking at the Google Analytic line charts, can you put labels on the dates of the same dates that you send out emails and things like that, or markers of some sort?
That's something I've never personally done. I'm pretty certain that you can put up markers on Google Analytics to mark that, but I need to actually look at that If you wanted to go into our marketing lounge and bring this up there, if you go into the Vertical Response community, that's a community link from your account, then you can start a conversation there. You could just mention this, can you put markers in there, and either I will come in and answer that, or one of the many customers who are in there asking questions will answer it and actually probably even tell you how to put the markers in. So I would go to the community and start a discussion on that.
Where do you find best practices or tips for subject lines, time of day, things like that?
A great resource for finding tips like that is to go to the Vertical Response Marketing blog. I'd say that's one of maybe the best resource right now. That's written by our CEO, who is a very experienced marketer, as you would expect. You can find her blog under blog.verticalresponse.com. Now, you might be feeling like I don't want to have to just search through her blog and hope that she writes about subject lines, but what's nice on her blog is there is a search feature as soon as it loads up, where you could say, I want to look at subject lines. And we'll see all the emails she's written about subject lines. So she has some 5 tips for creating a great subject line. She has example subject lines in here. There are a lot of different things she's written, say, about subject lines. So that's where you would find it. Now she's talking about subject lines for the holidays here. So that's where you can find some useful information, a very large database of great best practices directly from the CEO. And it's updated about 3 to 4 times a week, probably. About 2 or 3 times a week, actually. I'm getting a little overzealous in making her update her blog more than she needs to. So there's also our How to Do Everything site, our new help site, which has just now been released this week, and I'm still adding content to it. It's at help.verticalresponse.com. Right now, it does not have the best practice information in it. It will, over the next month, we'll have a lot of best practices tips for list management, for email creation, for surveys, for postcards. You'll be able to find this in here. There will be sections for best practices in every area that you look at. Beyond that, just to mention this, since it just come out this week to replace our old help site, this is a much more detailed version of the old How to Do Everything site, which you may or may not have used before. There are around 50 to 60 video demos on this site currently. They're very short demos that walk you through very specific pieces of functionality. There's a knowledge base through which you can search for help. And there's also these different tracks for learning about using vertical response. If you were new to vertical response, you could go here, and you could watch a series of video courses on doing some basic stuff with vertical response, like how you get your list into your account, how you build an email using our wizard, how you get started with our Canvas tool. So it's a really useful place to get a lot of information right now, all the information you need really to use vertical response. And then very shortly, it'll be a great place to go to get information on best practices. Just for a good thing to consider after today is that under lists here, you see we have use segments to build targeted lists. If you go here, you can watch videos on using segments. You can read text tutorials about it. If we go into send your email and examine reports, you could watch videos about examining your reports and looking at more advanced reporting, like using advanced segmentation. Again, this is currently having a lot of content added to it, but you get the idea of what you can do here from this help site.
Someone who wanted to know if we could take one more minute to review what needs to happen with the bolded text purchase amount under ROI tracking.
Got it. And that might need to be our final question for the day, I think, since we're starting to run out of time. But let's go back and look at that right now. We go into account, go into analytics settings, and go back to click to conversion. Here we can see, again, the snippet of code you add to your site, and we have this purchase amount. So what you're doing here, you have to set up a process on your own website in which your system is smart enough to take the purchase amount. So whenever someone makes a purchase on your website, if you have a thank you page for that purchase that says, thank you, you've spent this much money, that information is being sent from the purchase page to the thank you page to some sort of placeholder that says this is where the amount of money they spent should be displayed to thank them. So all you're doing then is now, whatever your placeholder is on your site currently that is smart enough to pick up on that information, you're putting that same placeholder here in this snippet so that then when that purchase amount gets pushed from the purchasing page to, say, the thank you page or the confirmation page or wherever, then not only will it show up, thank you for spending $50 with us, it'll also go here, and then we will see that and can put that in your account.
All right. Well, think that was the final question. I'm sorry we didn't reach every question. I do still have quite a list here. But thanks for everyone's participation. So in our follow-up emails, we will try to answer as many of these as possible. We will also be sending a link to a recorded version of this webinar, so you can look out for that as well. All right, thanks for everybody for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody.